Amy Winehouse, the singer who conquered the world with her unmistakable voice, unique style, and deeply moving lyrics, was more than a star. She was a woman with a personality full of contrasts, facing her own demons while enchanting millions. But what many don't know is that, at one of her concerts, Amy did something absolutely surprising to help a fan, something no one expected from one of the most controversial artists of her generation. Imagine the scene, a lit stage, the vibrant energy of thousands of people surrounding it, and in the middle of the crowd, a fan who, until that moment, had been lost and searching for something greater. He didn't know what was about to happen, but that moment, that night, would change his life forever. What Amy did there, with a simple gesture, was not just a display of generosity, but an action charged with meaning that many might even call unbelievable. The world saw her as an incomparable artist, but what she did for that fan was even more impressive than any stage performance. This story is much more than just a gesture of kindness. It's a reminder of how even the most misunderstood figures have the ability to touch and change lives in profound and unexpected ways. What she did in that moment, with a simple look and words directed at a fan, was something that, when you hear it, will make you rethink your view of the singer. Many still remember Amy for her music, but what happened at that show goes beyond what any fan could imagine. And, honestly, you won't believe it actually happened. So stop everything for a moment. What you're about to discover isn't just a story about fame or music. It's about a genuine act of empathy that will likely leave you speechless and wanting to know more about the real Amy Winehouse. Are you ready? Because what comes next will surprise you more than you could have imagined. Amy Winehouse wasn't just a singer. She was a force of nature. Her career was marked by ups and downs, full of controversies and moments of brilliance that left their mark on music history. With a blend of jazz, soul, and R&B, Amy conquered the music industry, but she was also one of the most controversial artists of her time, facing public battles with addiction and personal issues. Her life was often a roller coaster, but what few knew was the deep humanity that lay behind her public persona. It was at one of these moments in her career, while she was at the height of her fame, that she found herself facing a fan who was going through a moment of anguish. During the show, amidst the cheering crowd, Amy felt an instant connection with the man. What he didn't know was that his pain would be recognized by Amy in a way few could expect from a superstar. The stage was lit up, and the sound of her songs touched the hearts of her fans. But Amy, with her keen eye and keen sensitivity, wasn't just singing to entertain. She was there, feeling the emotions of her audience, capturing more than just their voices and faces. She saw their stories, their struggles, their anguish. She knew that music was a refuge, but also a catalyst for something much greater. She understood that there, in that moment, it wasn't just about the show, but about the lives being touched. The fan, however, didn't know he would be the target of her attention. He was there, lost in his own suffering, perhaps even feeling invisible among that crowd of strangers. He didn't expect to be seen, nor did he for a moment imagine his pain would be shared by someone so far removed from his reality. But when Amy realized what was happening to him, she did something no one could have predicted. She interrupted the show, not on a whim, but out of pure empathy. This gesture, so simple, yet so powerful, began to change the course of the night for that fan. It wasn't just a show of affection, it was a moment that showed that behind her public persona, Amy had a real connection with people. And as we all know, sometimes a simple act of kindness can change someone's life forever. The fan, Amy noticed, in that moment wasn't just any fan. He was someone who had come to the show not just for the music, but also in search of something more, perhaps an answer, perhaps a form of healing. His life, like many others, was full of challenges. Yet upon entering that energetic venue, he didn't expect that a simple, human gesture would change his view of himself and the world around him. He found himself at a stage in his life where hopelessness seemed to be his constant companion. He was going through a turbulent period, with emotional difficulties that he was trying to overcome alone. Music had always been his refuge, but that day he wasn't just seeking an escape from his anguish. He wanted to feel alive again, to believe that there was something greater for him beyond the invisible pain he carried. As he joined the crowd, the fan felt the anticipation in the air. Amy Winehouse's name was plastered across every poster. The stage was dazzlingly lit, and the energy was infectious. But deep down, he knew something was missing. He wanted to be touched not just by the music, but by something deeper, something that would truly make him feel seen. Little did he know the answer was about to arrive in a way he never imagined. He never imagined that his pain would be recognized there, at that moment, by someone who, at first glance, seemed far removed from his reality. But Amy, with her unique sensitivity, noticed something in his gaze. It was as if, in that moment, she had seen more than a fan in an audience. She saw a human being struggling, and that was enough for her to act in a way that would astonish everyone around her. This fan, who until that moment had felt lost in the crowd, would experience something that would make him remember that show for the rest of his life. He was no longer just a spectator, but a human being recognized in his pain, and this, in itself, would have a profound impact on his future. As the show progressed, the energy in the audience was at its peak, with the lights shining and Amy Winehouse's music captivating. But the fan in the crowd felt far removed from it all. He was in a delicate emotional state, struggling with the negative thoughts that plagued him daily. He had become lost in the whirlwind of life, feeling suffocated by personal problems, and perhaps even a sense of powerlessness in the face of the difficulties he faced. The pain he felt was invisible. There were no marks on his body, no physical explanation for what he was going through. But inside, he was disintegrating, fragmented by the hardships imposed on him. He was there at the show as an attempt to escape, hoping that Amy's music, with its melancholy and depth, could bring some kind of relief. As the crowd sang in unison, he felt alone, as if trapped within himself, unable to find any kind of solace or true connection. Each word of the song seemed to touch him more deeply, but paradoxically, he felt even more isolated, as if the music were a reminder of the loneliness that consumed him. He was at a critical point in his life where the little things no longer made sense, and the idea of something bigger happening seemed distant. He had no expectations that his life would be touched by something so impactful at that show. Like any fan, he just wanted to enjoy the music and the spectacle, but deep down, there was something much deeper that he didn't even know he needed. And it was then, at the height of his despair, that Amy Winehouse's gesture came like a ray of light. It was as if, without meaning to, she had sensed his pain, a silent pain that perhaps only those who truly understand the inner struggle could recognize. What happened next would transform that fan in ways he could never have foreseen. What Amy did in that moment was nothing short of extraordinary. At the height of her show, with the crowd in a frenzy of applause and cheers, she did something no fan could have imagined. Instead of continuing the performance or letting the show follow its usual formula, Amy stopped. She simply stopped, as if sensing something everyone around her couldn't see. Her attention was drawn to that fan in the crowd, and what she did. Next was a generosity that shocked everyone. Amy, with her irreverent style, didn't hesitate. She stopped the music and, microphone in hand, spoke directly to him. Her voice, normally full of energy and power, was soft and welcoming, as if shaped by the very pain and experience she knew so well. "Hey you, I see you there. "I know things aren't easy, but I want you to know you're not alone," she said. The crowd in absolute silence, hanging on every word. The gesture was simple yet deeply meaningful. She not only acknowledged the fan, but made him feel seen, as if that moment were a reminder that his pain wasn't invisible. He hadn't expected any of this. He was just there to watch a show, but the connection Amy established was something far beyond mere spectacle. It was a genuine human recognition, something he never imagined such a great star could do for someone like him. The crowd was in shock. Some applauded, others were speechless. But the fan, in that moment, seemed unable to believe what was happening. He was there, among thousands of people, and Amy had noticed him, recognizing his silent struggle. For him, that gesture wasn't just a pause in the show. It was a moment of transformation, a reminder that even in the most difficult moments, he deserved to be heard. Amy, with all her complexity and vulnerability, did something many artists wouldn't. She used her platform, her visibility, to give. Something that couldn't be bought with money or fame. She gave her fans a reminder that in the end, what matters most isn't status or celebrity, but the humanity we all share. And in that moment, she made it clear that she knew exactly what. It was like to feel pain and how, sometimes, a simple gesture can make all the difference. The impact of Amy's gesture was immediate. At first, the fans seemed frozen, as if still trying to process what had just happened. He stared at the stage in disbelief as Amy's voice echoed in his mind, challenging the idea that he was invisible, lost in the crowd. Throughout his life, he had always felt small, insignificant, as if no one truly saw the pain he carried. But there, in that very moment, Amy Winehouse made him feel unique, important, and visible to the world. The fans' eyes began to shine, tears welling up, but he couldn't express everything he felt. It was as if a wall had suddenly been torn down inside him, and he could breathe again. He never imagined that such an iconic superstar, so full of his own inner struggle, would stop everything to acknowledge him. The feeling of being genuinely understood and supported was something he hadn't known he needed until that moment. On the other side, the crowd was in a state of reverent silence. What Amy had done wasn't just a pause in the show. She had accomplished something rare and powerful. She had touched someone's soul, and in doing so, everyone watching. The show was no longer just a performance of songs, but a space for true connection between artist and fan. The energy, once filled with excitement and anticipation, was now charged with emotion and empathy. Some fans near the stage began to applaud, others murmured words of surprise. What had happened there was something that transcended the music, and everyone knew it. Those closest to the fan sensed the depth of the moment, and it was impossible not to feel the intensity of that silent exchange between Amy and him. The crowd's reaction, though much more subtle than the traditional outbursts of applause, was equally powerful. Everyone was witnessing an act of vulnerability, an act of pure humanity from one of the world's greatest artists. The fan, touched and still stunned by the experience, finally raised his hand in gratitude. He didn't know what to say, but he knew he would never forget that moment. He had just experienced something that would change his perspective on life, art, and especially the power of empathy. That night, marked by something beyond music, would be a turning point in his life, and he would never be the same again. Amy Winehouse's gesture wasn't just a momentary action, but something that resonated deeply with both the fan and everyone who witnessed that moment. By interrupting her show to acknowledge that fan, Amy was demonstrating that her music was only part of her true mission as an artist. She knew that in a world where everyone is chasing fame, status, and money, what truly matters is the impact we leave on others. And that's exactly what she did. This moment wasn't about the musical performance. It wasn't about the hits she sang or the bright stage lights. It was about the ability to connect with another human being in a genuine way, without masks, without filters, without pretensions. Amy, with her vulnerability and humanity, transformed the stage into a space where there was no separation between her and the fan. She wasn't the distant celebrity. She was simply a woman who knew what it was like to feel pain and struggle, and who, instead of ignoring it, chose to acknowledge it. For the fan, that gesture was like a beacon of light in the darkness. In a moment of suffering, he felt recognized, as if Amy had directly touched his deepest pain. Those words and the attention she gave him not only soothed his heart that night, but also gave him a new perspective on his own life. He knew his struggle wasn't invisible, and the simple fact that someone cared was what he needed to begin healing. However, the impact wasn't limited to the fan alone. The crowd, though stunned, was also touched by Amy's actions. That night, the show ceased to be just a musical experience and became something deeper, more transformative. Those in the audience saw something rare, a star who, despite her own internal storms, had the ability to look at others and offer more than just her music. She offered compassion, solidarity, and above all, humanity. Amy Winehouse, with her unquestionable talent and her complex human nature, demonstrated in that moment that an artist's true impact goes beyond the songs they compose. What she did was leave a legacy not only of art, but of empathy, reminding us that ultimately what matters most is how we touch and help each other. She proved that even in the music industry, where fame can often create distance, what truly matters is the genuine connection between people. What happened to the fan that night was something he never imagined he would experience. When Amy Winehouse acknowledged his pain and reached out to him mid-show, she didn't just pause the show, she turned that moment into a turning point in his life. Amy's gesture was more than just an acknowledgement. It was a sign that he wasn't alone, that his struggles, his pain, and his journey weren't going unnoticed. After that night, the fan didn't return home the same way he'd left. Although the pain didn't disappear immediately, Amy's gesture planted a seed of hope within him. He began to realize that no matter how difficult life was, there was something powerful in the human capacity to connect, understand, and support one another. And while the following days weren't magical, he began to see life from a new perspective. That night not only made him feel seen, but also inspired a desire for change. He began to seek help, reconnect with his own emotions, and understand that pain is a part of life, but that he doesn't have to face it alone. The simple fact of being noticed by one of the world's greatest artists gave him the strength to seek a new path, one that would help him escape the pit he'd found himself in. More than that, Amy's gesture awakened in him a new appreciation for life and music. He realized that art has the power to save, heal, and make a difference, not just as entertainment, but as a source of emotional and spiritual transformation. Amy's music, once merely a soundtrack to his anguish, became a tool of healing and resilience. The fan, who once felt invisible, now carried within him a story of real connection, a story that would forever change the way he saw life. From that moment on, he knew that sometimes a simple act of kindness can reconfigure the way we see the world, making us understand that no matter how lonely our path, there is always someone willing to lend a hand. What many don't know about Amy Winehouse is that behind her public image as a rebellious singer and her often misunderstood personality, there was a woman with a unique sensitivity to the suffering of others. Although her own demons were often evident to the public, she possessed a rare empathy, something that shone through in her music and, especially, in her interactions with others. The gesture she made to that fan was a clear reflection of who she was inside, a genuine artist, capable of perceiving and feeling the pain of others and of acting with kindness when least expected. Amy was never afraid to show her imperfections to the world. She wasn't an untouchable star, but a woman who, like many of us, was going through personal struggles. This is part of what made her so genuine and, in a way, accessible to her fans. They didn't just see an artist on stage, but someone they could relate to, someone who also felt and suffered, someone who wasn't ashamed to be human. When Amy made that gesture, she wasn't thinking about the repercussions or what people would say. She acted out of pure compassion, expecting nothing in return. That's what makes the story so powerful. It wasn't a calculated action, but a genuine reflection of her character. She wasn't there just to sing and entertain. She was there to connect, to be a source of support and perhaps even healing for those in need. Amy's gesture is a reminder that, no matter how famous or admired we are, we all have the ability to make a difference in someone's life. She shows us that true greatness comes not from fame or power, but from the ability to see the other, to offer a helping hand when someone needs it. Her humanity was intertwined with her art, and that made her more than a star. She was a generous soul, willing to touch people's lives in ways that often went unnoticed. Ultimately, Amy's gesture on stage wasn't just a selfless act. It was a reflection of what she truly stood for. A woman who, despite her own challenges, always had the ability to look at others with empathy and make them feel important. That's what makes this story so powerful. Amy, for all her complexity, did something many of us should learn to do: see others and act with compassion. When we think of Amy Winehouse, we often think of her extraordinary career, her public ups and downs, and her struggle with her own demons. But what truly defines Amy's legacy isn't just her music or the controversies that marked her life. It's the way she used her platform to connect with her fans in a human and sincere way, as she did with that fan during the show. Her gesture was more than an isolated action. It was a demonstration of the transformative power of empathy and understanding. In the end, what remains of this story is not just the memory of a stage performance, but the impact it had on someone's life, someone who, at the most difficult moment of his life, received a message of hope and compassion from a figure he never imagined would see him. Amy, by interrupting her show and connecting with that fan, did something beyond music. She changed his life. She gave him the feeling that his pain wasn't going unnoticed, and that somehow everything would be okay. This kind of gesture is rare, especially in a world where fame and stardom often distance us from everyday realities. Amy, with her fragility and strength, showed that the most important thing is not being perfect, but being genuine and willing to look at others, feel their pain, and offer something that truly makes a difference. So when you look at Amy Winehouse and this story, don't just think of her as the artist who gifted us with timeless music. Remember her as a woman who, at the height of her fame, stopped to see someone suffering and offered them without hesitation something more precious than any song, a true connection and a message that no one is alone in their struggles. And, in the end, that's what truly matters. The impact we leave on those around us, one that endures far beyond the stage lights. Amy, in a way few could imagine, taught us that the simplest acts of kindness can have a profound and lasting impact, not only on those who receive them, but also on all who have the privilege of witnessing them.